only 10, taking life for granted till we learned it had an end. Time is something they say you never appreciate till you age, and to this day you never knew. I wanted to be just like you. If I you started slinging coke and got the dopest pair of shoes. But yo, this house just ain't a home since our father hit the bottle and our mother hit the road. Time is something they say, never understand it till it slips away. And looking back, I think you knew I wanted to be just like you. If I
Okay, how my levels. I've got to go through and work with my. I started up my OBS before I turned on my camcorder capture, and so what that normally means is that I've got to deactivate and reactivate it. And I did that for my Anchor webcam too, even though I don't use it too much. I'm going to go through and I've got the shield over it. So how's all the audio levels and everything? I've appears that I've got good levels of audio out. I'm still working to get set up, and I'm looking for my diskette cables, and I can't find them. So I've got the one unit, my fully maxed out Model 30 on the bench back there. I've got a case that I can go through and swap in the planar. And I realized I could go through and I could, and in fact, that's what I may do. I may go through and just swap the ROM BIOS chips. And so I didn't necessarily need to wait for the RAMDACs to come in. It's going to be good to get that planar going anyway. I want to get I want to get that going so that I can kind of investigate a little bit more. Okay, so what we're gonna do, I'd actually like to go through and get MCGA convertible Model 30 R0. Okay. Yeah, I don't have a ham handle. I'm not a ham radio operator. So one of the things I want to do, that I'll prep, I want to put this out. In fact, let me, well, I guess I don't want to double click on my browser capture. I want to go through and change. Okay. But let's go ahead and show that. Okay. So it probably comes out better than how it does in OBS. I put the link in the video description, and I'm going off of a site that the contributor Vile R, and I don't know a whole bunch of details. He seems to be Israeli, by the tags within the Vogons forum within VCF. Guy that is in very big into the video levels of really more than just even the IBMs. And so he's gone through and worked with people. They've talked about the variations in the CGA, IBM CGA adapters that changed over time, the variance there, and what part number matched up with which video method, and just basically getting as much video for the levels that that those boards support. And just a fabulous website. I'm focusing in on one area, one aspect of that I wanted to check, and that is the PS2 Mul 30. It's the 8086 base version. The original BIOS revision 00 was released. Well, it's dated as the 2nd of September of 1986. So it's preceding the release of the PS2s, the initial release of PS2s that we're getting on the 35th anniversary, actually, is coming up here in April. And so that BIOS version existed more than 6 months before the PS2s were initially announced. And it's the oldest PS2 BIOS that's out there. The other PS2 BIOSes, of course, they probably suppressed a lot of the development versions, but when they released the PS2s, the microchannel models, the Mul 30 was the only 8-bit system. All the other systems were microchannel, and that is the original Mul 50 021. And what that means is 50-021. That means the 20 megabyte MFM hard drive. That was the only submodel of the Mul 50 that was initially released. Later on, that was replaced with the 50Z. But when I say the Mul 50, I mean that 021 submodel with the 20 megabyte proprietary hard drive. There was the Mul 60, which is the tower version. Of course, both of those, the Mul 50 and Mul 60, being based on 286 CPUs and having 16-bit microchannel slots. Then the Mul 70, and the Mul 70, the BIOS there, all those, the Mul 50, 60, and 70, they have BIOSes that are dated as the initial release from February of 1987. Now, the Model 80, the tower version of basically the Mul 70 with the 386 DX 16 megahertz CPUs, the Model 80 was delayed and was not released for a few months afterwards. Of course, coincidentally, IBM used the announcement of the PS2s to also announce for OS2 operating system. And the even the announcement was delayed, waiting on OS2 development. The machines, in a sense, were ready just a little bit before that. But so the Model 30 Revision 0 BIOS, being the earliest PS2 BIOS, also the first system, in a sense, that had, and I don't want to mix up, there's also the PC convertible that is a unified system that had also fonts, and it's documented on this site as well that I've linked, did have integrated video. But I'm placing the desktop aspect of the Mul 30 being the first system that had integrated video on the main board, or the planar, the motherboard of the system. It was no longer an adapter that you put in there, but it was integrated on the main planar for a desktop Mul with a, let me put it this way, with a separate display, with a separate CRT, because the convertible, it was And that's a fascinating study in itself. And I've in this last week, of course, I went through and I started working on video capture for the PC convertible, and it has fonts for the LCD display, and it has the fonts or the different way of displaying, and it's mainly the aspect ratios and things like that of the external CRTs, being effectively a CGA output. The monochrome output is viewed as being it's just a composite video out for that. And that's how a little bit of how the CGA changed. The CGA adapter on the PC series was that composite video out was changed around to be at different levels and different abilities. Um, but and one of the really cool things of that CGA stuff, I was looking it over last night, is that VialR was doing a video screen that you would go through and you would look at that on a composite display, and basically it was an overlay that you could tell in programming by the viewer. There wasn't any other way to tell in the hardware. They changed components on the CGA board a little bit, the resistor values and things like that. But you could see on the display based on what was more the more prevalent image of if you have the older or the newer CGA board. Now, the revision 0 BIOS of the MAL 30, there was a font that was developed for that, and then later on IBM replaced that. And notably, the way to tell, and I'll have to see, because the other aspect I could have been more prepared in is I could have had, I've got the compact flash adapter in. I've got compact flash chips. I need to go through and actually develop a compact flash that I can switch between these MAL 30s, because I have my Max 30 and I don't want to necessarily tear it down to put on things like the hard drive and things like that. I don't want to necessarily go through and swap the BIOS of it either. And really, that won't work on my Max 30, because there's another aspect that I want to touch on, that I have the PS2, the 8-bit PS2 display adapter on my Maxed MAL 30. And that is the unit that is on the, let's go through it. It's on the bottom here with the cover closed. And then I've got my external drives off to the side that I can go through and connect. I've got my video capture connection I can connect into it. And I might do that because I'm a little bit more prepared initially, because also, and I think it was that from the aspect that VialR didn't have a PS2 display adapter to work with. I don't see it listed. He lists IBM BGA, but doesn't seem to cover the aspect of the 8-bit display adapter that was made for like the MAL 30 and IBM AT and IBM XT for adding VGA capabilities. The VGA chips on the PS2s, even the microchannel systems that had them, it's 8-bit VGA, and it's not necessarily. I mean, it's VGA capabilities that were expanded later on, but it's just really not all that. I mean, it was a big leap at the time with the PS2s introducing VGA, but it's kind of not really a whole bunch of performance aspects there. And so, well, to answer my Max 30, I do have the SCSI the SCSI 2 SD board even set aside. I haven't even utilized it yet. I've got a mechanical SCSI hard drive in my Max 30. I've got a gigabyte SCSI drive in it. And I wanted to show that because I do have that PS2 display adapter, and that does have an early date to the to that ROM extension that's on that board. And it's the same ROM extension for the whole lifespan of the adapter. IBM didn't update it later on or anything like that. And it's also an early date. Now, one of the things one of the aspects to look at here for the Model 30 Revision 0 font is that 0. Okay. Now, the 0 is squared off like a capital O, but it is crosshatched, just like a programmer would do, like I do on my zeros. It's crosshatched from that diagonal line. Now, with the VGA font that IBM did later on, and they also adapted the MCGA font later on. There were 3 BIOS releases, or 3 BIOS versions on the Model 30, even before it was released for sale, before it was announced in April of 1987. There's the revision 01 that was in December. It's like December 12th of 1986. And then there's revision 02 that I think was in a date of like February as well. In fact, let me look. Oh, and that's another link I can do too, that I want to do. Okay. Okay, so there are, the link I just put in the chat is my web space of the Model 30 BIOS versions for that initial 8086 based system. Now, it's also important to note that the Model 30 was in that initial announcement of PS2s in April of 1987. The Model 25 wasn't there. The Model 25 had not been released. It was basically derived from the Model 30 later on. So it's not in those initial, that initial release of the PS2s. The Model 30 was the only 8-bit system in that initial announcement of PS2s in April 1987. And so in that web space, there's a versions.txt file, and it tells the dates and the FRUs that are listed on the ROMs, that you don't even have to know, you don't even have to check in software. You can look at a planar and you can see that FRU on each of the chips, the ROM chips on the planar, and know which version it is. So it's easy to go through and get that. I'm going to go through now the other aspect, and okay. So I'm going to the Ardental site, and so there's the revision 0 BIOS, which is 2nd of September 1986. Revision 01 was 12th December of 1986. The revision 02 was the 5th of 1987, 5th of February 1987. And that is in line with the other microchannel PS2s that were in the initial PS2 release. They seemed like they resolved for the February dates, even though the MCGA font was changed between revision 0 and revision 01. Now, I don't know why IBM didn't suppress the BIOS versions, the earlier BIOS versions, from being released and just have them all at that February level. You know, there were the revision 0 versions that slipped out, the revision 01 that slipped out, as well as that revision 02. And also the Model 30 is notable for it does not have a BIOS revision 03 that has been seen in the wild. It may have been suppressed or something else, but it jumps up to the latest version of the 8086 base Model 30 is 31 January of 1989 is revision 4. So there's the of course the Ardent Tool site shows the layout of the planars. I'll bring up the planar that I'm talking about working with here in just a moment. Whether I get to the point of actually swapping it in and doing other things. Okay, so there's the Model 30 page, the Model 30 that's based on the 8086, and so, and the Model 30 is also interesting from the aspect, and I've discussed this prior. I'm being really careful on anti-static here, trying to be careful enough. Let's go through. I want to hide the browser capture. Of course, I could bring up the browser capture for these other links I'm providing, but here is the Model 30 planar that I plan on going through and working with. And so it's got there's the ROM BIOS in the corner of that U17 and U20, and that is the convention there. And the first revision 0 is strange, and it was marked, it's got non-sequential part numbers. It's got that 68X1627 and 68X1687. But that is the revision 0 BIOS. And you can even see IBM Corporation 1985/86 for the copyright dates on there. And of course, I need to go through and put RAM on there. It's got soldered in RAM here. And this is the P planar of the Model 30. And it's the same as what is on the executive workstation, the 7496. That's the P planar. There's the 8086 CPU, 8 megahertz for the -2. And in this corner, this is all the MCGA section here. You have the 2 chips, the MCGA gate array, and the I'm trying to think of what the other one is, the video controller. And even so, it's got the baud wire, and also there's the 72X8300 chip, the gate array, that was later replaced with a another chip, the 11F. I think it's 2082 off the top of my head. Kind of hard to remember. But the early Model 30 planers had that. There's very few of them that had that baud wire. You have that baud wire. It's an early Model 30 planer, and also it's interesting for that date pinned in, the 02-87. That's the February of 1987, just like the third release of the BIOS would have. And this is the only PS2 planer that I have seen with a socket for the RAMDAC. The MCGA also has a feature connector, just like later on VGA would have. And IBM did not put the VGA feature connector on any of the microchannel planers. It is not implemented in the for the VGA that's on the planers of the Model 50, the 50Z, the Model 60, the Model 70, the Model 80. All those systems that are microchannel with VGA do not have a feature connector. The only instance where a feature connector was on VGA from IBM is the PS2 display adapter. And so there's even pondering. I mean, there's the connector for the MCGA out. And there's even the thought that, I mean, this has digital signals that are available on that feature connector. The socketed RAMDAC, I've pondered, and I thought originally this was because IBM typically started with a ceramic RAMDAC on a system and switched to a plastic RAMDAC later on in production. IBM also typically had brown colored PCBs for early production planers, and later on when they were produced more heavily, they went to, green PCBs. That's not a hard and fast rule, but that is a typical observation that brown PCBs are typically earlier. And so there's also the VRAM, 64 KB of VRAM. And it's just it's a question of, was the Model 30 designed to have a digital output as well, for something like a terminal, a board that could be put in a terminal, like the later info windows that had a separate display. What was the intention? Because this is a little bit different of planar with this stepping. It's not a straight edge to that. And, the Model 30 having the 1 and 2 ports rather than a keyboard and mouse. Just is there was some stuff that was modified later on when they went to the case style that could, was used for the Model 3286. And so that's just, I'll go through. Tom thinks that Major Tom thinks that the socket for the RAMDAC is there just so it could be easily replaced, because these are very static sensitive devices. That I'll have to be very careful. And later on, you'll even see designs with diodes that can even be bridged across the plastic RAMDAC that are for clamping diodes to give it some protection and better, more controlled functionality in how it operates. But this is the planar that I was planning on working from and testing the BIOS revision 0. And so, of course, we are more than halfway through the hour. I wanted to go through one of the things I can do as a lead-in that I thought was to go through. In fact, I don't even have to put myself on the webcam. Let's go through. And I might have to connect up some power cords here for one, but that's fine. I'm prepared for that. I really want to see what there is to this. I'm going to go through and get my maxed Model 30 running. So we go through, and I've got the external drives. I mean, I could have made a little bit better arrangements that I didn't have to go through and connect all these drives and have more of a minimal system. But I want to go through and just as a way to keep these, I'm going to tighten up the captive screws, and I'm going that VGA connection. I'm going to go to the top slot, and that's where I have that PS2 display adapter. So I'm not going through to the MCGA on the planar. I want to look at what there is to this early VGA, because this looks like the earliest VGA that IBM had. And this is the metal. In fact, I need to get pictures of it still. Okay. So we're latching on the cords. I'm going to go through on the power cords. This feels a little bit, this is probably the initial, the power cord that was included with my executive workstation, because it feels a little sticky, like the cable that was included in the box. And the funny thing is, it's got a straight-on connector. It was included with the executive workstation, but it's got the straight-on connector for the executive workstation, needing that, typically needing that angled connector works a little bit better. Okay, go power to my external CD-ROM, power to my 4869 drive, which is the B drive effectively. And lastly, power to, let's get a straight cord. And I'm going to the lower case. That's my maxed mul 30. Okay. Power switches are off. Okay. I'm going to go through, power up the CD drive, go through, power up the 4869, and go through and go to VGA, switch on the right system. Okay, so we saw the 0 go by. We'll see it for the 640. So that, oh, connect up everything but the, I should have thought there's more connectors. And again, on the mul 30, it doesn't matter where I connect these into for that 1 and 2 port. That'll give me a chance to show the memory count again, where, okay, now that I got the keyboard and mouse connected in, get the right power, switch on the right unit. Yeah, and I ordered 2 of the RAMDACs that look appropriate. And why is this still giving me a keyboard error? I say it doesn't matter. Oh, connect the right the keyboard and the mouse to the right system. I tell you, I didn't sleep very well last night. I'm very tired. And it's showing by just the little tiny things that I'm having happen here. So as we see the memory count, notice the 0, 640 KB. Notice the zeros in where it shows the what's loading there. All those zeros are more ovalized. They're not squared off, and they have the dot in the center, like the later VGA font. So even though, and I do have this video captured, it's going to be this ROM extension captured elsewhere too. Okay. Okay, video. I just need to get my glasses off here. And I need to get some pictures up. So this is get on the right keyboard. I'm still making little mistakes. I've got the Model M in my lap and typing on it, and yeah, it doesn't do anything except put Control V's up on the screen. So that is where I have that captured ROM extension for the PS2 display adapter, that 8-bit VGA adapter that is in the MOL30. Okay. And I'm typing it out more just as a, okay. So we see there that has a date for that PS2 display adapter, which is at the ROM extension is at the address, the C000:0, and it's got that 55AA header in there as meaning a ROM BIOS extension. And the next, I think it's byte or 2 bytes, are the size. I think the next byte is the size, because you could go down to, I think, I don't know if it went down to 2 KB spaces, but that is an encoding. That third byte is an encoding of the ROM extension size. And we can see the ROM extension copyright dates there. And it's even marked 1984, 1986. And then it has the 27th of October, 1986, when the PS2s were, of course, were released. VGA was released or announced with the PS2s. It wasn't announced early. The VGA, was announced as being a part of the microchannel PS2s. And then I'll have to see when the announcement date. I don't know when or how IBM went through and announced that when they released the PS2 display adapter. But it has an October date, but the font is already changed. That VGA font there has dots in an ovalized 0, and that is not the same as the revision 0 Model 30, because there's the revision 0 Model 30 BIOS font set that has the 0 squared off like a capital O and has a diagonal slash on it. So as they talk about type your own preview text there, that you could see how it shows. Oh, okay, I've got to go through and interact. It's a browser capture. Okay. Why am I not interacting yet? Interact. Okay. So if I click in there, it highlights it again. So there is I'll put that molim down. There's the initial MCGA font that had the squared off zeros with the slash. And then later on, I'd have to go through. Let's hide that. I mean, you can go through on the site and you can also see where the VGA font is shown. And it's shown just like we see here with the ovalized 0 and the dot in the center. So, and then, so one of the aspects too, I mean, the thought is, hey, it's DOS, getting in the way as well here, because DOS is going to have where it can do, control of how items are displayed. And I thought, well, if you go to just the ROM basic, that should show straight away the font of that system. And that's going to be the funny thing, is I don't know if this has, and I need to copy it over from a PC DOS, because I don't know. And there's a method to my madness. I'm doing a directory of any of the basic or basic A stub files and searching all subdirectories. Okay, so in the DOS directory, it'd be interesting to see if even these are from Microsoft or from IBM. That and look at that hard drive display. How much is free? How many bytes are free on a Model 30? It's based on an 8086 CPU released 30 years ago. It's give me 35 years ago. I've got a gigabyte of free space on there. So and I've got my DOS directory probably in a path. Yeah, I've got my path, I've got DOS. So I could go through and I could do a basic. Okay. Let's go through and change to the MS. Oh, okay. So look at the directory, that MS-DOS _2. Oh, okay. You know what that is? These are files that I moved recently to the system from a diskette drive, actually from a 5 1/4 inch diskette that was MS-DOS 2, the first DOS version that supported the 360 KB drive. And I found it on a diskette and I copied it over to archive that version. So this is directly from IBM. And this should run. Yeah, okay. So that would be the thing, is a comparison, under basic here. It shows the ovalized 0 with the dot in the center for the 0. And so this is that PS2 display adapter. That's the VGA font that's on that display adapter, even from October 27th of 1986. And so I just wanted to see and note what that was first on this system. And of course, if you start basic from DOS, you use those stub programs, you just give the system command, goes back to DOS. It's ROM basic, but you started out from the DOS operating system with that stub. And the basic A, in fact, this is that directory. These are the effectively the DOS 2.0 files. And at the very end there, you have the basic and basic A. And basic A is the advanced stub. That's for, there's memory aspects and other things that you could a little bit more advanced environment of basic. So that's that. And originally I planned to bench this planar, and okay. So let's get things powered down. For this system, I won't need, and I even have a stack of drives here, and I need to go through and test these drives to make sure which ones work and which ones don't. These aren't magnetized. And I didn't put my fingertips on this morning. Now we shouldn't have too much trouble. I'm going to go through and I'm going to try and be quick enough. And of course, by pulling the riser, I mean, the other planar doesn't have a riser anyway. I thought I'd show this to Daniel. He's not on the live stream today, but this is what I was talking about. I have a weighted base, brass rods, and I need to go through and prep these, take the stickers off, and paint them up and actually solder. But they're nesting brass rods that I have to increase the height of this. And then I've got it on a boom. And the inside of this is really kind of dusty. And I've got the shield over. In fact, there, I've got the wonder if I've got more brass. What'll this do? This is probably a big enough diameter. Okay. And this does wobble a little bit initially. Okay. I just want to go through and see. Well, it's kind of showing me in slow motion for the, okay, so the anchor webcam. Oh, and that really shows all the mess around my feet. So I could even gone the shorter rod. I have to make sure that it's not Okay, we can pull that. We don't need it. Still. Don't even need that segment. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's all right. You see all the dust inside my case. Get that slider all the way out of the field of view. And can I go through and get this? Okay. And okay. That's probably a good enough camera angle. People can see my backside. And as I say, I could normally just go through and swap the ROM BIOS, but I want to go through, and this planar should work. And I really want to go through and test that RAMDAC aspect as well. And this has got the key lock connector here, just out of view. Okay. And pulling these things out is really kind of an interesting prospect at times. I think this, I'm missing the captive screws on the back of it. And that angle, that stepped angle is the thing that's causing me the trouble here. Because it catches down here on, that's probably going to be the easier way. Or is it? Yeah. And I have to make sure I don't bump my, oh yeah, that's dusty. So, and I'm trying to minimize sparks here. I'm hearing sparks. I'm about actually to turn on the swamp cooler. Interesting that I have stems and we can work with. I mean, I can work with getting the, and I don't know what I'm going to do for a diskette drive. If I'm just going to go through and have to power through to ROM Basic and it'll give me a 601 error because I need those diskette drive cables. I've got them somewhere. I've got a few of them and I couldn't find them this morning. It really irritates me. Now, there's a reason that this has the tape over, the painter's tape over the EEPROMs. And the EEPROMs, as you can see, if I can get the right field of view, you can see that pin 1 is lifted off of both of those EEPROMs because that's the bigger capacity EEPROM. That's a 27256, 27C256 instead of a 27C128. So there's a double the capacity they actually need, but I only had these EEPROMs available, so that's what I burned. And this is the BIOS version 4, which I also need to go through and test a little bit from this, and that's the reason I put together basically this system. And we will steal the RAM from it in a moment. Here is my revision 00 BIOS planar. And we'll have to see if this can get in there without bumping the webcam too much. And I don't know if IBM intended the back bracket to be put on later on or what? After the planar was put in or what exactly? Because it is tight otherwise. And of course it's got this brace, the metal brace at the top that was removed with the later case style. And it's interesting that there is not a, well, I don't see a key lock jumper. Maybe it will be there when I get this to the rear. Oh yeah. Not that I necessarily have to connect the key lock connector. I don't want to necessarily do the power. I may just even drop in one screw. Yeah, I wish I had more diskette cables. I'll have to, maybe I need to make some too, but I have, and what is real typical is I put like items together, box them or bag them up, and then if I lose that container, I've lost all of them. So we'll go through. I even have other risers. And of course, I am remembering that we need to go through, and I'll hide tracking numbers and everything else like that, addresses and this. But this is the RAMDACs. In fact, let's go through. So in this view, at least, Okay. And of course, from any Chinese aspect, you need to make sure that they're not remarked chips. And in fact, these, it's so funny that these are older chips, and normally the Chinese are remarking old chips of the same pin package as new chips, trying to sell them as new chips rather than the old chips that they are. But they also, they're smart enough to know that sometimes the old chips have a premium, and they can simulate them on the newer chips, or newer chips might be more available to find. And I'm being careful enough with this for static. And the other aspect is that I need to go through, we need to see, pin 1. Okay. So I'm going to focus in. I'm getting washed out by the lighting too. Sunlight is just playing on the room, and so it looks like my cutout is to the rear, and I can see from the other planar that it's that orientation for the chip. Interesting too that they have tantalum caps. They have less tantalum caps on this planar. And the only thing I want to do with the screws is I want to make sure that the planar's not moving around too much, that it's centered based on where it needs to be. And we are just going to have to see how this does. I could go through and I could see black to black for power leads. I could go through and see, I could go through and switch diskette drive cables, but okay. But we'll just depend on getting dropped into, we're just going to depend on getting dropped into ROM basic. And I need to go through and switch RAM too. Wow, that keyboard is tight. For the MAL 30, I may just go through and connect up to port 2 and not connect the mouse. I don't need the mouse. Okay, I've got the riser in. The last thing that we need to do, in fact, it might even be interesting to see for all that. And let's get that source over to, I'd be interested. Let's go through and let's even see if this will go through and power, if this will run with just that soldered in RAM. That's a test I always wanted to do. Okay, I just switched power. I didn't swap the SIMs. Okay, turn off the Anchor webcam. Is this going to run? Hey, look at that, 120 KB. That's a soldered in RAM. I didn't have to swap SIMs. Okay. Date and time and diskette drive error. Of course, the diskette drive is not connected. Gave us the same clock symbol that later on that I thought was the later BIOS of the Mall 30. Okay. Okay. So it keyed up. Okay. And we can see some differences there. I mainly did the zeros. Well, joining, I mean, we already went through the the VGA, the early VGA display adapter, and we saw that it has the VGA, the later VGA font on that anyway. But we see for this, that font looks very different, and we've seen the slash zeros that squared off. They're less ovalized. They're more like a capital O. But to differentiate them from a capital O, they have the diagonal slash for the zero. And I think that was the most dominant font aspect that is repeatable here is that zero, how that zero displays, although you can see a lot of other differences to the other characters. And I've gone over an hour of my live stream. Of course, gave it a little bit, I had a little bit too long a start. And later on, I've been going through and I've been stripping off the leader from the front of the live stream. If I go through and I have that coming soon for a half hour, then I go through and strip it off later on. And I played some music at the start. I don't know if anybody recognized it, but and then I went back to the animation sound so I could have a place right at a half hour that I could strip off from the front of the live stream. So that was all the intention of what I was wanting to do with the and it's good to see that the RAMDACs I ordered work. They're not mismarked or something else. That they're the item that's described. And so, and you know, I like going through and playing around, switching the BIOS versions, just like I went through and that version 4. I'm going to go through and I'm going to toy around a little bit with it. It goes through and it is supposed to give support for the 45 megabyte proprietary hard drive. So that'll be an upcoming video. And we've gone through and we've seen that the soldered RAM on the planar, and this is the same setup as what the 7496 would have. I was hearing the Home Computer Museum in the Netherlands was having a hard time with their executive workstation because the planar RAM, or excuse me, the parity RAM on the planar was giving problems. They even swapped it, and it's still, their planar is not operating correctly. So this planar, for all that, for all the early Model 30 that it is operating. We can see that MCGA font here. And maybe that was why it wasn't commented on for the PS2 display adapter, because that font, that VGA font, is no different from what it is otherwise. And so let me go through. I want to bring up that browser capture. That's the font that we're seeing. And can anybody else think of a character that I can easily do that looks different? I noticed that there's not a real good comparison. At that, there's if I go through, can I go through and interact? I'm going to go through to the IBM PC and family, go back. Okay. So if you go to, and I'll give the link again here in a short. This is where all the fonts are shown by Vile R, or it's Vile Rancor, or you even has a YouTube channel that I went through and looked at. But there's EGA, there's here's the VGA font. And so going through, and we could even go over to a different mode. We could go through to I think it'd be like a screen 1. But there's your VGA font with the ovalized 0 and the dot in the center. There's a lot of the other characters. I think that there was I'd have to look through and find out how to go through some of the umlauted or other things changed. And of course, MCGA has a lesser MCGA has I think it's missing like a row. There's and so the scrolling down further. Okay, I guess it put me up at the top. Even covers the 3270 PC font and the professional graphics controller. And then also the PC convertible font, and talks about the LCD and then the optional external monitor being the 4:3 ratio. Really handy. Here's the Mall 30 area. And so if we even look at okay. So the same thing, it's just it goes through, and if we go through and do a if I press enter, I'm just going to get a syntax error. But we can even do like a screen 1. And that really looks different with the 40 columns. You're really seeing the difference in fonts. I could go back and to the other Mall 30, and I could go into basic again and do a screen 1 the same way. But this this is where I wanted to look at, because I knew that there was a font revision that IBM did after this initial BIOS version. They changed it shortly afterwards. And it's funny, over the span of most of September, because this BIOS is marked at the date of 2nd of September, 1986, and that if you remember the ROM extension on the PS2 display adapter is the 27th of October of 1986. So just a little bit less than a 2-month span or 60-day, it'd be 55, it's going to be 50 something days between the difference is the BIOS dates. The BIOS compared to the ROM extension date, and over that time and going to VGA, they determined, hey, let's go through and do a different font here and not slash the zeros anymore. Let's go and ovalize them, and then put dots in the center to mark that there is 0. Here's a capital O. And that's actually, a capital O is more ovalized in this font than it is. So just as a pause. So seeing how I didn't have to really switch a whole bunch of stuff here, we're going to go through. I'm going to power that off. I could have had things like more than one keyboard out and things like that, but because going through and switching these so much worries me sometimes. Okay. Had our mouse cord kind of. I'm going to put the mouse on this one, and then we're going to go back to I'm doing a blind connection for that high density 15-pin video capture. And again, I could go through and I could have more than one cable and have like a switch box to more easily switch between. I've got switch boxes. Just need to get them to use them. Okay. So we're going to power up CD, power up the 469, power up the system. We've got everything swapped over. We see back to the zeros with the dots in the center. Okay. And I was thinking that yes, a little bit off the screen for that, but I'm not going to sweat the details on that. Okay, and we have to remember which directory. And it was MS DOS _2. Okay. Got our directory. We've got our basic.com. and give our system a little bit of chance to catch up when we do a directory listing. Okay, we're going to do basic. We're going to go through and do the screen 1, and that puts us in 40 column mode. Now we can still see here that the this is capital O's, and those look the same. Huh. Okay, so this is me on. This is worthwhile going through and checking because I thought maybe the screen. So let's do this screen 0. That puts us, well, screen. Okay. So that put us back into, and I'm trying to think, I thought it was screen. I don't know why, I don't, 80 column mode. Is that a mode 3? Okay. Okay, and that's not the original. Here's zeros, and there's slash with a diagonal line and capital O's. So that's like the initial. And this is operating from that PS2 display adapter. It'd be interesting to look at the later MCGA and I mean, for this, I've got that planar. As I say, originally I could have even benched the planar, but I'm just trying to do. In fact, let's do a system. Okay, so we're back out to where, you know, that's how it went through and booted. That's the VGA effective font there. Go back into basic. And, you know, capital O's, zeros. So that's just basically the rundown that I wanted to do in comparing these. I probably need to do some screen captures of all the different screen modes, and have the revision 0 BIOS MCGA and do the later BIOS versions of MCGA, the PS2 display adapter, and also the planar VGA on a microchannel system, IBM. I need to go through and probably do screen captures, and I could even go through and pause a video, and that'd be something like I could do it like an announcement, or I could type the text in there of going through and doing all those different screen modes, to show the different fonts, just to document all that stuff. So I hope people are as intrigued by this as I like to be. We've been going for an hour and a half. I'm going to go through, and it's actually improved. I felt tired coming into this, but I feel better now. And of course, I've done caffeine from an energy drink, and I've got some breakfast that I didn't eat, just like normal, and it's getting on to close to lunchtime now. But I think that this is just the overview that I did, and of the looking at things. I think I covered the bases relatively well. I haven't had a whole bunch of feedback in chat, but that is fine. I did have initially, had some real strong responses and everything else, and I went through and answered questions. So that was pretty good success for the for what I wanted to do. And I guess here on the okay. So let's get back to our image there. Got all the tools out that I did. And of course, I've got this bottom system is the one that's powered up right now. My Maximal 30 had the external diskette drive and the CD-ROM. In fact, I was glad that I copied over that the basic stubs to start, because otherwise on that Maximal 30, I've got MS-DOS 6.22, and I didn't have those basic stubs otherwise. Those were included with PC-DOS. And I actually want to go through for revisions of those basic stubs as well, of documenting them, file sizes, and different versions that might have been in effect. And so, you know, yeah, I'm trying to face the camera here. I realized I was not facing the camera for a lot of this view for the lip reading aspect. And I can't very well imagine American English. I don't know if the lip positions are any different compared to the Scots that of of how we go through and have our lip positions for saying words. I know that you go through and you do lip read quite a bit, and I try and be accommodating. It'd be nice if I can go through, and I'm still showing audio that I've got my Anchor headset that's giving out audio, but the YouTube is warning me the audio stream current bit rate is lower than recommended, but it does that a lot. And I can't tell with the data stream out. I'm looking at my firewall output, and it's about 4 megabits of upload. And I don't think that the audio stream in that makes much difference, or that it compromises audio at the expense of video. Now, my CPU usage is rather high. It's hovering about 60%. And when it does that, it ramps up the fans on my recording system, and also any of the camcorder. That's when you start seeing delays and stutters from those video sources. Otherwise, so it looked like we had a pretty good viewership. It marked the peak concurrent viewers at 7 at a couple different times in the stream, which is fine. And I realize a lot of people like to lurk and just watch. If I could do, I wish I could do subtitles on my videos too, but they're on the live stream. And of course, Google gets to the point where they go through and they do on the fly subtitling and based on just machine algorithms, and that does pretty good. So I haven't seen any other people say in chat that the audio dropped or anything like that. So, and my YouTube is now back to saying excellent connection. CPU use is still at about 60%. And still that steady 4 megabit upload from OBS to be live here for the audio and the video. So I could have put something on my back display there as well. I could even go through and connect up that display, and I think I'll go through and pull out one of the switch boxes. And since I'm going through and only having one system powered up, but I want to go through and do a video of capturing those fonts and all the different screen modes and doing it from basic. That way, making sure that DOS, anything to the font under DOS, the character, the code page is not going through and interfering. We're going to go into ROM basic. I'm going to do that from, and just so we can go through the different screen modes and show that. So, but I think this is a good preliminary thing to that area. So, but I'm going to go through and I'm going to wrap up the stream. Look forward to thank you for everyone for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you next week as well. I have to decide what my topic will be next week. I need to get moving and actually get some stuff sent out. I've got some packages I need to compile, and the weekend is kind of a respite from that because my local post office is only open till noon for one, I think. And then, of course, not open tomorrow for being Sunday. But I need to get some packages together and get them sent out to people because I know that I've gone through and promised to send people different details. I hope all the links that I provided during the stream were helpful. I'm going to go through and do, in fact, this is almost like a good thumbnail in a way for the video. I didn't get into this page until last night to really look at a lot more detail. I've looked at it previously, but here is that that link to the wonderful site, that int10x.org, and that is by Vile R or Vile Rancor. And I don't know any real further details, but you can find them on the Vogons forum. You can find them on VCF forums. They have, in fact, let me do the last thing here. Let me give their channel. Because I was going through, I don't know if I want to do a history. Yeah, that's an easy enough way. Okay. So if I go to their, I wanted to give and it's not aliased in any way. So it's a little bit, maybe more of a challenge to find. This is Vile R, and they're on YouTube as X86 Vile R. That is a link to their YouTube channel. And go through and watch some videos there. Very extensive graphics, very just some all-around cool stuff. This person has gone through and has knows what they're talking about. They've gone through, and just the detail of what they're able to produce, or even simulate on newer systems, simulating the older video standards, is just amazing. There's a bunch of videos there, and it just some really cool stuff. And they're just below 700 subscribers, 695 at the time of this. I went through it and I subscribed, of course, rather recently, just so I know. And it's been a year since the last video that they've really gone through and done. They've got some videos from a year ago, or 2 years or more. So, and I could even go through. They've got enough subscribers. I could go through and tag them. As I say, I think I'm going to do just a video, not a live stream. I'm going to go through and do all the screen modes under ROM Basic, just to show what that looks like. And maybe I can tag him and see if I can get a response. But it's been a good stream otherwise. I thank everyone for tuning in and watching. Yeah, and I've got some questions on the beard. It's, if I go through and I actually get gainfully employed at some point, I wonder what the fate of the beard is going to be. And it's so much of the channel presence now, and something I'm known for. And I've called the IBM Santa Claus or whatever else. But thank you for the compliment and how you think it is. I like it too. Doesn't itch me that much or anything like that. But so, this is IBM Museum. That's all I have for now. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this week, and look forward to seeing you soon on the next live stream, same scheduled time. Thank you. And go through and I can get it from the right place.